Hello, everyone. This is Winston with the Creative Productivity Channel, the channel where we talk about solutions and paths and tools that allow you to be creative, if you're a writer or you're an artist, and productive so you can get the things done that you need to get done. So, today I'm going to talk to you about the difference or the things that I love between taking notes that are digital and analog. So years ago, and I have to give you a quick story in order for this to work. Years ago, when I really decided to go on my productivity path, I I was having a challenge. So I love sales. I was in sales, and every single month, as many of you who are in sales know, that there was a sales competition. So at the end of the month, there was either a bonus or a reward or some recognition. And I worked really hard. I had lots of fantastic clients. I did lots of great things that I thought was just amazing. But every single month, I always would come in, I wouldn't come in first. I would come in like second, in some cases third. And I was saying to myself, I had like a plan. Like I knew how many calls I needed to make, how many conversations I needed to have, how many proposals I needed to have out there. All my follow up I thought was well. And I kept saying to myself, why am I not number one? And I realized it was because I wasn't as effective as I possibly could be. So a client would say, "Hey, Winston, call me at 10 o'clock. Let's follow up on this conversation." And I'd call them at 10 o'clock or 10:01. And it was like a psychological thing that happened where actually, where that client would go, "Well, I got to think about it more," or "I'm not ready," or some other thing. But if I said I'm calling you at 10 and I'm calling you 15 minutes earlier, they're like, "This guy's on top of it." It changed their psychological view. At least that's, and my psychological view. And I did that because I got into things like the wonderful Stephen Covey. I got introduced to him, somehow, and I read his book, and it kind of transformed my life because I understood it, and it worked very well with my analytical and creative kind of back and forth in my brain. And so since then, I became much more effective about how does that work. And I feel bad sometimes because I would follow that company if it created a digital tool today. And then in 2010, as many of you know, Steve Jobs introduced the iPad. That was the second most transformational thing for me. When that happened, I was like, oh my goodness, my creativity is on a whole nother level. You mean I can walk around with a digital tool and it works the same as my notebook? That was the premise. It didn't really work that way. The first iterations for the first few years of an iPad, it didn't really work like that. It wasn't as effective as I thought it was. So I kept working with analog tools for a long time. As Franklin Covey Wayne, I started to get involved with other things. I got introduced to this bullet journal by Ryder Carroll. Fantastic tool for you to kind of create your own path. But at the same time, I kept working with an iPad. And today, I do a hybrid that if you are into this, or if you're into digital tools, you'll love, is that I still write my notes like I did way back in the day in my Franklin Covey planner. But I write it on my iPad. I use a tool called Notability, which I'll create a video for that the way I do Notability, I've had people ask me about how do I do that. And then I put it in an archive. So I put it in a tool called Evernote. It's been around for a decade or so. And it's like a filing cabinet for everything that I do. And then from there, I write it. And like I said in the previous videos, once I take my notes for the day, and I will also make sure that I go back the next day and read what I wrote. I do like the digital way because if you use a relatively new iPad with a Apple Pencil, it mimics writing in a book. I do like that because I like to have my stuff wherever I need it. When I would go around and I'd have to carry, I travel a lot before before the pandemic. I traveled a lot. So hopefully one day this video will come out and people will be like, what pandemic? But I traveled a lot, and I didn't like to travel with anything more than I needed to travel with. And the iPad became the replacement of the notebook. So now that the fact I could do both was really awesome. And so when I am writing with my Apple Pencil using my tool called Notability, I write it just like I used to write those old timey things. And I write, so if there's an email that I wanted to remember, I would write email, semicolon, sent an email to Chris about such and such and such. So when I go back the next day, I can remember that I wanted to remind myself that I sent Chris an email. That will link to other things I'll talk about on this channel, where I like to keep my inbox as clean as possible, so I don't let the inbox, I don't get to inbox infinity where I have just a lot of things in my inbox. I will archive that email because I wrote it down and I wanted to remember it. So I will write it down and I'll go from there. Or if it's a meeting, I'll actually write meeting, semicolon. Are there any cogent points from that meeting? Unless it's a meeting where I have to take notes, because that's a different thing. I'll talk about that in another video about how I handle that kind of thing. And I use really interesting ways for me to remember what I wrote down. Now, if you're writing this down, if you're a person that's using an analog tool, this might be a little bit more challenging to do. But I use different color schemes, and I've seen like high school young ladies do this, where if it's a task I got to do, I'll write it in red. If there's some money that went in or out of my pocket, I'll write it in green. So when I review it the next day, I'll know, yeah, I got to remember that. If it's something that I need to remember, like say it's like a password or something like that, I'll write it down in a certain color so I know exactly what it looks like. If it's a meeting, for some reason I chose blue in that meeting, so I'll write down that the meeting in blue. So just at a glance, when I'm looking at it the next day, I'll say to myself, wow, I had these 3 meetings, I have to remember, etc., and I'll go from there. And then that's kind of the way I do it. That way, it's like a system, like a productivity system for notes. And like I said in previous videos, taking notes is the foundation of any productivity system. If anyone tells you that you can start a productivity system and all you got to do is write down your task without writing down or having a system to actually remember what you're doing every day, then you're missing out on a key piece. You're missing out on a key piece. You're missing out on a key piece. So that's kind of the way that I write down or actually go through taking my notes every day. That can be translated to whether you're writing it down or you're using a notebook or you're using a notepad, or if you're using things like Apple Notes and those kind of tools. I have to give Apple some credit. You know, years ago when they introduced those tools, they really they weren't good. But now they've gotten better. Apple Notes and Apple Reminders, because I use another tool called Todoist for many years that I absolutely love. But I have to say that Apple Reminders is starting to getting close to Todoist. It's starting to get close to it. However, taking the notes is the key to that. Because if I don't take the notes, everyone, if you're listening to this channel for the first time, remember this is the Creative Productivity Channel with Winston. If you're listening to this, if you don't take the notes, then I won't remember 2 or 3 days now what I need to put in the daggone reminders or into the Todoist. Because if I'm in a meeting, I'm not going to stop every time in a meeting. There's something I need to remind myself of and start taking reminders in the meeting. I'm in the meeting. Be present wherever you are. So if you're in the meeting, just be there. Don't be in the meeting and don't be trying to make reminders at the same time. Multitasking is not real. I know it sounds cool because there's so much inputs that we have that multitasking sounds like a cool thing to do. But if I'm in the meeting, I'm in the meeting. If you call a meeting with Winston, I'm going to be in it with you forever. I'm not going to be checking something else. So those are some of the key tools. So digital versus analog. Make a choice. Winston does a hybrid where I write it down and I write it down in an iPad, which is digital, but I'm writing it down physically. That's kind of the way I do it. If you still do it analog, analog is fantastic. If you look at some of the bullet journal videos that are on YouTube, they are some of the most wonderful things I've ever seen. They are just so unbelievably awesome. And then there's some people who know how to type their notes in a way where it resonates and connects with them. So whatever you do, do it, but choose a system. Choose a system to do it. Don't feel like you have to be locked into it forever, but try one if you hadn't had it before. But you have to think about what's the way to do it. And don't look at 10 different ways and figure out you're going to do 10 different ways. Try one for a couple of months and then go from there. My recommendation was if you have an iPad, try it with an iPad. There's lots of tools inside of an iPad. I'll talk a lot about that in in future videos where I'll talk to you about lots of the tools that I use. If you are using a bullet journal or Michael Hyatt Full Focus Planner, which is another fantastic tool, um, please make sure that you're in it, that you're totally in it. You're not halfway in it. You're all the way in it. So this is the Creative Productivity Channel. This is your boy Winston A. Wilson. I love this. I love being creative. I love writing stories. I love being productive, where I'm able to help organizations and help my friends and help my family and help serve others. I love all of those things. And in 2020, you can do some of those things, but you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan and a real defined way as to how you want to get it done. If you have any comments for me, if you have any questions or anything, please let me know. I will respond. I will give you feedback. I will give you help. Please let me know. I want to give a great shout out to beachypal.com. They recently shared with me some of their fantastic CMOS. I've been using it. It's been actually helping over the last short period of time. I've been doing it with my MS. I don't know if this is a medical thing, so I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving you medical advice. But it's been helping me feel a little better and get a lot of energy in it. So thank you so much for beachypal.com. Thank you so much to the Atlanta Black Theater Festival, which I'm a board member with. This video may come out after that, but it's been a great festival. 40 plays in 4 days. Atlanta, btf.org, and also the Rising Tides Charity, which is an organization that we have to help creatives find their voice. So all of these have been awesome. We've got a litany of fantastic events that we've got going on where we actually create stories online, or we actually talk to you about how do you become an actor, or how do you get into stocks. All of these things, we're really there to help serve other people. So this is your boy Winston. Thank you so much for being part of the Creative Productivity Channel, and have